Good morning, everyone. I'm Carlo Martuscelli, a health policy reporter for Politico. You're here for the second interview of the morning with Christoph Glaetzer, Chief Global Value and Access Officer at Janssen. But before we start the interview, just a few housekeeping remarks. You can ask questions through the Swapcard platform. If you're in the room, you can scan the QR code on the screens. Otherwise, check the instructions on our events website. We like debate, so please talk about us on X or the social media of your choice. Our hashtag is Politico Healthcare. Welcome, Christoph. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. You come at a great time because EU pharmaceutical policy has never been as interesting as it is now. And I'm speaking, of course, about the pharmaceutical package, which is now being negotiated in the European Parliament, and which will go to the Council probably. The Council will start discussing, rather, next year. So, Christoph, I know that the industry isn't very happy with the proposal, to put it diplomatically, and it's a point that you as the industry have been vocal about. But at the same time, the sector has many research and manufacturing sites all over Europe. It employs a lot of people. So I wanted to know whether your company and other companies like yours felt like you had some sway with the capitals and the MEPs, and whether you think you'll be able to convince them of your point of view in these upcoming negotiations.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Let me maybe start with a more positive message and a positive moment, right? We talked a lot, there's a lot of things going on in the world, but it's also a very positive moment that we are in. I have the pleasure to work in the industry now for 30 years. I started right after kindergarten. And what I have seen and what I see right now, that science is moving at a pace that we have never seen before. Yes, we have many problems, but we also see now treatment options that were unthinkable just 10, 20 years ago, right? We live in a time we have gene and cell, we have new treatment modalities. We are at the edge of not only treating, potentially curing diseases. So it's an extremely positive moment. And it's great, and we need to make sure that we are able to bring these innovations to the patients as well. And this is certainly where, as the person responsible for access for the organization, where I'm not satisfied. Where there I still see a lot of opportunities where we need to do more to address the inequities in Europe that we see, to address the patient out-of-pocket affordability issues in the US, and the overall budget constraints that societies and healthcare systems go through. So there's more to do. But it's also a great time to do so, because we have these innovations coming. We have the innovations coming, I hope, to treat the infectious diseases that was just talked about earlier, but all diseases are equally important. And this is, I think, where we are committed as an organization as well, to see that we bring innovations. That's our main contribution. And we bring innovations now and in the future. And this is maybe, yes, where you are going, where we are concerned. If you see some of these policy initiatives right now, which I would say short-term focused to address maybe budgetary constraints right now coming out of the pandemic and economic uncertainty, but there's a huge risk of these having unintended, I hope, unintended long-term consequences to be able to bring these innovations that we are now having finally also in the future, and that's where we are concerned.
Sure, and the technology is certainly remarkable, and I think anyone who follows the pharmaceutical sector can't help to be excited to some extent by the progress that's being made. But as you've alluded to, on the policy side, there seems to be something of a maybe divergence, if we want to put it that way. So I did want to know whether you felt like you were getting the message across to the MEPs, to decision makers in the capitals as well. Do they see things like you do?
Maybe not 100%, but I think there's some improvement that we now see in the latest refinements of the original proposal. And maybe let me make it clear a little bit where I see particularly two areas where we need to continue to engage with the stakeholders to explain how science actually works, right? And that this continuous innovation is only possible because we continuously invest in the remaining unmet need in disease areas. And I come back to the unmet need piece. But the first part that I think is concerning and something where we need to work with the stakeholders more is the idea of reducing IP, reducing the regulatory data protection, reducing the benefits for often diseases, because that is, again, what is needed to fuel this innovation tank and this innovation pipeline is that predictability of the incentives, the predictability for the reward for the innovation for the efforts we do now. I have the pleasure to work with the R&D organization on a daily basis, and yes, we talk about solutions that may come to the market in 10, 15 years. That's a long horizon. All right? And many of the austerity measures that we see now are more in the maybe year, 2, 3 horizon, but they risk that predictability of investments for 10, 15 years. That's something we need to address. And that linked with the unmet need to come back there. In the original proposal, you had the perception that, we need to do a lot of explaining what unmet need actually means. If the idea is, once you have a drug for one disease, the unmet need is solved, we wouldn't see what we see right now. All the innovation in cancer, prostate cancer, multiple myeloma, is because you have one treatment after the other. You combine treatments and you get to better outcome. If you would have followed the definition, or the original definition of unmet need, we would have stopped, for example, in multiple myeloma, maybe with Velcade 15 years ago. You cannot, right? We need to continue to invest because we know patients go back into the disease. We know that not every patient responds equally to each treatment option, so we need to have that continuous innovation in areas where originally people would have said, yeah, it's solved. No, it's not, right? And this is the part where we need to work with the stakeholders to make sure that everybody understands how science works, how innovation works, how the step innovation leads to better outcome overall.
I wanted to take a step back from Brussels for a second, because there's also changes at the policy level in different countries. There's the US, of course, with the Inflation Reduction Act. Germany also passed new measures to contain healthcare spending costs and drug expenditures last year. So what do you make of this shifting international context, and why does it seem to be moving against the industry's preferred direction, or at least that's my impression?
Yes, there are certainly multiple developments everywhere in the world. And since I'm responsible from a global perspective, yes, we focus a lot on situation right now in US, but also Germany, as you can tell from my accent, is pretty close to my heart, right? So I look at this country as well, which is then concerning if you think about Germany was always a country where innovation was coming from, right? Particularly in the pharmaceutical sector, where innovation also was rewarded. Their concept of value assessment, which, thank God, did not follow the single measure of value of cost effectiveness, which leads to huge delays in access in the markets that use this concept, was more pro-innovation. What we see right now is that there's a kind of a step back, and there's a risk that innovation is not seen as being meaningful. Even if this might not have been the intention of some of the policies, but if a country like Germany says an incremental added benefit for the people that know the details of the German system doesn't get rewarded with incremental value recognition as well, that's the wrong signal for an economy that is dependent on innovation. That's the wrong signal for an economy, for a country that wants to lead in healthcare as well.
You're obviously responsible for protecting your company's interests, and as that should be. But if you were a decision maker inside a health ministry of a European country, and you had to deal with the problems that they're dealing with right now, an aging population, a growing debt burden, what would be your advice to them when it comes to pharmaceutical policy?
I think the first part would be that pharmaceutical policy is part of an overall healthcare agenda, right? You can't just look at the contribution of the drug industry or the medicines itself. Healthcare is a local concept, so you have to look at the total holistic picture in that local environment, where healthcare is, where is your population going, where are the gaps in your healthcare delivery, is the infrastructure in place, do I have the right concepts for prevention of diseases, do I have social healthcare systems in place that cover the entire population, and where are these areas where I can improve the outcome. For example, there statistics out there that that's still 20-25% waste in healthcare. And yes, you can see that in some of the healthcare systems where you can see there is an opportunity for more efficiency. There's an opportunity for more constructive dialogue between the different stakeholders to identify these areas where healthcare can be better, maybe with the same level of investment right now, if we optimize healthcare delivery. In my previous life, I had the benefit to be a nurse as well, so very close to actually delivering healthcare. So I understand that very often that last mile, that last inch to the patient is very important, and there are still huge opportunities across the healthcare systems to sit together with all the stakeholders, don't finger point, but agree on the common goal, which is improving healthcare for the society overall, which means every single patient, and the society altogether, and then see where are these areas where we can still do better. And we are more than happy to partner, we do already, in all the countries of the world, also to address the bigger picture, rather than just focusing on arguing on the value of drug A or B.
Christoph, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. We've reached the end of our interview, but I think that final point you made about looking at pharmaceutical policy as just one aspect of a wider system, and we have to look at how the system as a whole functions and not just at these parts in isolation, is a really valuable point. And I'm sure it'll inform our next discussion, which will be on the EU's pharmaceutical strategy and industry competitiveness, which I will also moderate. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so if everyone can just stay in the room, we'll just prepare for our next panel that will begin shortly. Thank you.